Hello, everyone. This is another Freedom to Feel conversation, and my guest today is Diana Zamudio. She is a heart centered facilitator devoted to the healing of childhood trauma and the awakening of inner wholeness. For over 6 years, she has walked her own healing path through the sacred work of facilitation, holding compassionate space for others as they reconnect with their true selves. She's also the author of Healing Childhood Trauma, an 8-week grief workbook for healing. So this is the title that I found it to be consistent on Amazon. So I just took that title. I know you sent me a different one, but I hope this is the right title, Diana, of your book. Healing Childhood Trauma, an 8-week grief group workbook for healing. Is that correct? Is that the the full bio will be at the end. But the question that I love asking all of my guests is, who are they in their own words? And that's the question for you, Diana. I know that you probably heard that before because I pretty much ask everybody. How do you introduce yourself? Who is Diana in this very moment?
Yeah, I love that question. Diana at this very moment is fully herself, something I have not been a lot of my life. And so I'm really grateful and really proud of myself that I've gone on this courageous journey to discover who I am through, in my own words, this grief work. And then I'm also a very passionate about facilitating.
Right. It's beautiful what you've been doing. The book that you have written also, I will have the cover here in a moment when we are talking about that. But talk to me about the inspiration of becoming an author, a writer, and also the backstory of you. How did this happen? Like losing touch with your true self. How did this happen?
Yeah, Patrick was my number one supporter. I always knew there was a book in me, and I met with Patrick for over 12 years, and he passed away a couple years ago, and he changed my life. It was working with him. I had gone to therapy for 20 years prior, and it was helpful. I understood a little bit more of my story, but the grief therapy is really what changed me. It's really what healed me. And as I share in my book, a big part of my story is I was diagnosed clinically depressed, and I was on heavy doses of antidepressants for over 20 years. And I tried to get off of them at least 10 times for over 10 years and was unsuccessful every single time. And I didn't realize it was because I had all this repressed emotions in me that needed to be medicated. I was born into a family that, looks were more important than feelings. Feelings weren't allowed. And I had stuffed so much because my parents were really sick. They were incapable of, um, meeting my needs as a child. And so they were both very angry, and there was a lot of yelling and screaming. So I felt very traumatized my whole childhood. And I moved out at an early age at 16. And, I just thought if I got bigger and grew older, I would heal. Most of us don't
Mhm.
realize we carry all this stuff with us. Um,
Yes.
so I had all this repression in me, all this, but my survival skill growing up in that home was to pretend everything was fine when really it wasn't. And so I had perfected being a people pleaser and perfected pretending. And as long as I smiled and thought I was fine, I thought I was fine. So then my mom passed away when I was 30, and then I hit the deep, dark depression. And that got me on the path of trying to figure out what was wrong with me because I didn't know. And so I was with a therapist for almost 20 years, and I outgrew her. And then when I met Dr. Patrick Arbor, he was a grief counselor, and
Mm.
he was the first person on this planet that really could see my sadness behind this smile that I perfected. My first session with him, he said, Diana, you're sitting on a bed of sadness. And I'm like, I am. I was
Yeah.
surprised. But he was able to say and all the right things to get me to get this grief out. Um, During our work together, he said, I think you need it would be wise of you to attend one of my 8-week grief groups. Patrick had designed an 8-week grief group for the loss of a loved one. And I said, well, my mom has been dead for 20 years. Why do I need to do that? And I just trusted him. He said, just go. So I went to his 8-week group. He said, do the exercises on your mother. So we would tell the story of, everybody was talking about their loved ones and, how sad they were that they lost these loved ones. And I'm talking about my mom who'd been gone for 20 years and I had no real good relationship with her. So it was in one of the weeks we were to write a letter to our deceased loved ones and share how we felt, what, life was like with them, what it was like after since they've been gone, and just to be really, honest. I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? I didn't have a good relationship with my mother, but I did it, and that was such a key pivotal moment in my journey. When I read that letter to the group of people, it wasn't what I wrote. It wasn't the words. It allowed these emotions to get unhinged. And I'm sure nobody even understood a word I said because my emotions were so strong. The tears just came flowing out. And I was honest, I didn't have a good relationship with my mother. And it was in that moment that I realized my grief was so complicated because it was like, we didn't have a good relationship. There wasn't love there. And I was so confused. So that was the beginning of really getting this grief up and out. And so I did the 8 weeks. And after that, I felt lighter. And then I went back to do my work with Patrick week after week after week. 6 months more, he says, I think you need to do another 8-week group. I'm like, really? I already did one. He says, why don't you do it on your father? So I did the same process on my father, more grieving, more crying. And I'll never forget this one couple shared about losing their daughter, their 21-year-old daughter in a car accident.
Yeah.
And the father was talking about how much he missed his daughter and the tears and the grief that he was sharing on this relationship he had with his daughter. And I was crying and crying, not so much about Bob's loss, but it was about what I never received. I didn't have a father like Bob. And so then that become like, oh my God, I'm really grieving all that I didn't get. See, I didn't know any of this. We don't know what we don't know until we're ready to know. So, then went back to do my work with Patrick, and 6 months more, he says, I think you need to do another one. So all in all, I did 4 8-week grief groups. And after that, I was able to successfully get off my medication. And it did take me 2 years. I titrated and would feel feelings, titrated and feel feelings. And it took me 2 years to get off my medication. And then I was just this raw nerve, right? But yeah, so then after I'm off all my medication, so then COVID hit, and that was like 6 years ago, and I got laid off from my job, and I got diagnosed with a really serious health condition. Um, and so I was dealing with all of that and working with Patrick and got the inspiration to create my own 8-week grief group for childhood trauma survivors using Patrick's format that he used that helped me grieve. So I was really the third and fourth 8-week grief groups. I was really, my intentions were to grieve my childhood. So I did that, even though everybody else was grieving the loss of a loved one.
Yeah.
I felt comfortable enough to just grieve, be intentional about grieving my childhood.
Yeah. Wow. It's yeah, first I want to say I feel like what I mean there's so much there because it is my own experience too. So as you speak, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I feel this compassion, this empathy to myself and then to you. And then like, oh, I'm sorry we went through this thing. This
Yes.
unmothered and unfathered. Basically, that's what we were
Yeah.
because I really had to do that too, Diane. It was not grief work, which is fascinating. I love this idea of letting all that those suppressed emotions to come out and just kind of reveal them, because that's what happens, right? The more we suppress, repress emotions,
They
the
stay.
more. the more we suffer. Yeah, the more.
Exactly. You know, that Bessel van der Kolk book, you know, The Body Keeps the Score, everything is stuck in our body.
Yes.
And it was Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now, that planted the seed to become the observer of the pain and the observer of the thoughts. And I remember listening to his CD, you know, 15, 20 years ago on my
Yeah.
way to and back from work. It was Greek, but 5% got in. And I heard the message, you know, become the observer. And when I started doing that and getting out of my head and my thinking, I was able to figure out how to process triggers. You know, the PTSD that a lot of us have in our body, we get triggered, and that trigger is the past pain. And you know, understanding that phenomenon has been life-saving for me. So when I get triggered over, you know, and Patrick helped me figure this out, working with him, um, you know, is that repression. So when I can pause and, you know, what am I thinking? How am I feeling? And give it some time and attention. And it's taken, you know, a lot of years to kind of get this down, but it's
Right.
that process that has, like, the gifts are in the triggers if we choose to look at them like that way.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of
Yeah.
people get triggered and they act out. I would get triggered and I would go inward and get depressed. So either
Uh,
way, we're bypassing the emotion. And so when we can learn to not act out or not shut down and get depressed and be with that emotion, that energy, that trauma, and I talk to it now. You know, I still get triggered and I'll sometimes have to lay down and give it attention. And, you know, and I in my Saturday groups that I'm so passionate about, I say this every week, you know, childhood trauma was not our fault, but healing is our responsibility. And
right.
when we can look at the triggers as a gift, we can give them attention and talk to it. And when I get triggered, I'll say, okay, I'm not in my childhood. Patrick would always tell me, Diana, you're not in your childhood anymore, you know, but those triggers take us back to the past and we
Mhm.
feel the feelings are from the child. And
Right.
so understanding that gives us power to, okay, I just need to acknowledge that pain because we were never acknowledged as children. Our parents didn't come and say, how are you feeling? You know, let me give you an ear to lean on.
Right.
We had to carry it all inside by ourselves. But
Mhm.
now when we get triggered, we can use it as an opportunity to heal. So that's what I do. Not all that repression. I had so much in me. And, you know, I feel like I'm way more current because I've been doing this for a while, processing my pain and telling myself a new story. I tell myself, I didn't do anything wrong, you know, because we walk around thinking we did something wrong. I'm okay in this present moment. You know, I have all these things that I repeat every Saturday in my drop in groups because
Yeah.
we all need to hear them and we need to hear them over and over and over again to
Yeah.
undo this old way of thinking.
Wow. So yeah, it's in the subconscious mind, right, Diana? So we need to hear. I do a lot of dream work, you know, Jung's work, and I write it down everything because that's a way to know what the unconscious, the subconscious, where it's at, if it is healthy or not healthy. So I'm always writing it down, all my dreams. It's very
Oh,
has been very helpful.
it's
But it
awesome.
Yeah, isn't it funny that a lot of time, do you think that there is a moment where we become healed and all this is gone, or this is a work for life, a practice for life?
And that's a great question. And I have chosen to have a whole new belief system. And I've, you know, we all come into this world with these beliefs, usually from our parents or our caregivers. And as
Yeah.
we get more, like, I'm so passionate about clarity and awareness, the more clear we get on things. And I've
Mhm.
gotten so much clear through processing my triggers. And I've incorporated a whole new belief system. And I believe, and I know for a fact it gets better. I mean, I'm so much better today than I was a year ago. And last year I was better than I was the year before. So I
Right.
believe it gets better each year. And the ant, I want to believe if I keep doing this, I mean, the answer is I don't know.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I want to believe that that's the goal. That's
Uh-huh.
the goal. And,
Mhm.
you know, maybe it'll happen one day, maybe it won't, but I do
Mhm.
know it gets better. And to me, that's worth holding on to.
Yes, beautiful, beautifully said. I love the wisdom that you carry now. Is that it sounds like a healing wisdom. This I usually call it that healing wisdom.
Mhm.
I love the cover of your book too. It really stopped me when I saw the cover.
Oh, thank
It's like
you.
this child by herself and all these ramifications, all these possibilities, right? The potential that's in her.
Yeah.
If she can only go inside, have the courage and kind of be with herself. In a sense, we have to grow our own mother and our own father, right, Diana? And that's what I've been
Yes.
doing, reparenting myself, being my own
Yes.
parent.
Yes. And I co-facilitate a reparenting group with a friend who's very passionate about reparenting. And there's been this new loving parent workbook that we work out. And it's this beautiful practice where we get in touch with our inner child's voice. And then it's a very vulnerable practice. We do it on Zoom with all the cameras off. And we give our inner child a voice. And then we practice talking to our inner child from a loving parent perspective, you know, telling ourselves everything we wish our parents would have told us but didn't.
Yeah.
And doing that practice, I take that loving parent with me, like wherever I go. I used to have such a critical thought process because that's what I thought of myself. And with these new practices, I'm really done beating myself up. I'm done being critical. One thing I love to repeat all the time and do for myself is to really meet myself where I'm at. A lot of times I don't have energy, or a lot of times I'm not feeling well, and to not beat myself up and just meet myself where I'm at and start from that point. Um,
Right.
Patrick in my works, he said so many profound things, but one thing that he said to me that really kind of caught me off guard, but really helped me so much. He was a childhood trauma survivor himself. In fact, he tried to take his life on 4 different occasions in his early years, and of course it didn't work, thank God. And he became this saint on this planet, and he helped so many people really work through grief and childhood trauma. And I mean, his service was just so amazing because you could just see the people that he
Mhm.
helped. But one of the things he said to me, he says, Diana, you and I, we were damaged. And I was so taken back by him saying that. But he gave me permission to be okay with that. My brain, it didn't function well from all the trauma. I mean, I'm undoing it now that I'm on this healing journey.
Yeah.
But for decades, I just was so frustrated and comparing myself to everybody and feeling bad all the time and having a smile and being inauthentic, trying to fit in.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
you know, now I want a sense of belonging. Now I know who I am, and I have compassion for myself. And I bring that to my group every Saturday. It's like, I'm on this path with all my participants. I'm one of you. We heal together. I mean, I hold the space for 90 minutes every Saturday religiously because it's my medicine, and we've become a family. We've become, and I never know who's going to show up. And I take everyone through a meditation where we connect to our bodies, and then we have sharing, and I close with a somatic affirmations, and I do the same thing every week. And people have an opportunity to just be themselves and share whatever they need to share, feel whatever they need to feel. I encourage tears because a lot of us, crying has been like, my dad was like, don't cry or I'll give you something to cry about. That's where I come from.
Yes.
But it took a lot of years to get comfortable with crying. And I think that's the gold in healing, is letting those tears out, letting that repression out any which way we can. So yeah, it's a real
Wow.
journey.
Yeah. I love the work you do, the work that you're doing, the work that you have done, and the commitment that you have for for helping others the way you are is truly, truly beautiful.
Oh,
This
thank
is
you.
something that was asked. I remember having a conversation with somebody recently, and she said, "Oh, have you done group work? Like a women's group work for childhood trauma and healing." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't remember doing that before. I've done a lot of my work on my own, spiritual work and all the reparenting and all this, but I never done a group." What is the difference, Diana? How do we know when we need to be part of a group like the one that you host, facilitate? I would
Mm.
love to hear that.
Thank you. I got goosebumps with you sharing that. Um, the power of group work to me is it's so healing. And being in a group and listening to other people share their stories, we're able to get in touch with our own stories a little bit more deeply. We're able to feel things that, like somebody may have a completely different story, but the feelings are the same.
Yeah.
And it's so powerful. And of my 8 weeks, the first 2 weeks are sharing your story, and so half the participants will share their story. Everybody has 20 minutes to share their childhood trauma story, and it is so powerful. I mean, I still get I continue to heal while I facilitate, and that's part of my healing journey, and it's why I'm so passionate about it too, to be of service and also to help continually heal myself. Every group I'm to the place now where I don't, not as much stuff comes up, but in the beginning when I was facilitating, oh my gosh, so much stuff would come up. And when I created this, Patrick was my number one fan, and he said, would you like me to be your co-facilitator? So before he passed, I had so much gratitude to have him be my co-facilitator for my first groups. And it was just so amazing. But yeah, the power of healing in a group is kind of undescribable because you get such a different perspective and listening to other people share. And I think we get connected with parts of our stories that we weren't even aware of. And, for my case, and I think a lot of other people's, a lot of us don't have good memories because trauma hijacks our memory. And so listening to other people helps us put our own puzzle pieces together. So I think all of that is so healing. And plus then we're feeling, and this isn't a fuzzy feel good journey, but
Yeah.
it's a healing journey where it's an opportunity to feel it and release it, and we feel lighter. And it's just really powerful.
Yes, thank you for letting me know that because that's what I'm creating here. I have this, I think I mentioned to you, did I mention to you off record? Yeah, workshops that in person. And that's the main thing that comes to me, storytelling. So we can tell our story. If we don't want it to kind of say it, just, coming from the first person, we can be creative about it. So I'm writing a whole story now because I wrote a book about all the bad experience, all these traumas that I had in the past. But now I created a short story with using metaphors. So that is really
Love it.
helpful too. Yeah, it's being
Yeah.
very helpful.
That's what I was thinking about when you mentioned you were doing that. I'm like, that is another beautiful way. Hearing stories, people can get in touch with their own stories through stories. And I think it all really, really helps. In fact, I'm creating my second book is healing our inner teenager, and it's going to be, very similar format with different topics and how to heal through triggers. And I'm creating that right now because to me, this is a continuation to give ourselves a voice to the parts in us that, need healing. And then I'm also creating a facilitator workbook, which so that like if anybody wants to facilitate, an 8-week grief group, you don't have to have Diana to do it. I mean, that's my passion, which I'll always be doing, but to
Yeah.
have this book that so anybody can grab, that's why I created this 8-week grief group to healing our past pain, so that you can get a group of people and go through the exercises, and have somebody facilitate it. It's about getting a group of people together and finding safety. Safety is the number one thing that I think is so important. If you can, and having a facilitator that knows how to keep and create a safe space, which Patrick was expert at, and I got to learn from him. He taught me everything I know, and so I took his practices and my wisdom,
Yeah.
and so I think people feel safe, and so then you can't be vulnerable if you're not feeling safe. So
Mm.
that's my vision and my passion, moving forward.
Yes, it's truly beautiful, Diana. Thank you. I
Thank
love the way you talk about Patrick. Yeah, thank you, Patrick.
you. I know he's with me. He's with us
Yes,
here.
I know he is. Yeah, it's beautiful. Huh. Yeah. So I know we sometimes don't acknowledge the unseen, right? The forces of the the things that we don't see, the presence of those who have passed, have gone, but they're still here somehow. I can feel their presence, and I can definitely feel in you, in your words, in your work. It's truly powerful how we help one another. You see, that's very clear to me what you're saying about working with him, and then you have the groups, all about working together. It's so much
Yeah.
better anyway, isn't it? I love working with
It
others. There's,
is, and not feeling alone. And, I think a
yes.
lot of us, isolation is a big part of this,
Mm,
disease of childhood trauma. And, Patrick, he's the one who role modeled. He would have his 8-week groups and monthly groups, and they were my safe places, and they still are, even though he's not here. There's
yeah.
5 of us facilitators he mentored that we keep his work alive. I'm the only childhood trauma facilitator with his group, but everybody else has the loss of a loved one, and we all have our own group.
Yeah.
And he would always say, connection is what binds us to life. That was Patrick's motto. And when I first started this journey, he gave me a life worth living. I was never
Mm,
suicidal, but I had too many times where I wish I wasn't here. My pain was that great. And,
mm,
I'm not ashamed of that anymore, because I understand people that don't want to be here. I understand how deep that pain goes, but there is a way out, if we can have the courage to feel our past, but not be stuck there. That's the trick. How do we not be stuck there?
mm,
And it just takes what it takes. And I do know that I don't know why some people embrace this work and others don't. And I don't know what others are feeling. I only know what I'm feeling. So I really try to stay focused on sharing my own, experience, strength, and hope. And I can have compassion and empathy because I truly understand. I perfected pretending everything was fine, and it wasn't. And I know I'm not alone in this world using that survival mechanism to get through this life. And today I feel everything, and I have a lot of moments of joy, but I also still have moments of not feeling so well. So I know the more I can honor whatever shows up,
mm.
it's an opportunity for it to pass.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, beautifully said. I love the wisdom. Yeah, gosh, I'm just such a wisdom lover. It's just beautiful. That's
Yeah,
it. If we can honor everything, life as a whole, and it's not perfect, but it can be complete. It can feel complete in any moment. And that's how it is a practice because of the mind. The mind has this tendency of separating things out of practicality too, right, Diana, and
exactly.
functionality. But it's a
Yes,
tool. It's a tool. We cannot have the mind using our true self, but quite the opposite. We have to have the true self using the mind as a tool to navigate this reality. And a lot of people get that confused, the other way around. And that's what I feel from my own experience.
I agree. And it's such a process, it's like, oh, how do you get to your true self when you're disconnected? It's a process, and that's what my little stones are all about on my way,
Oh, yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
patience, trust the process. And I
I'll show it again. I'll show it again. Yeah, I love that. I love the cover. I just love the cover.
all those stones, they all
Yeah.
have big meaning. We start at this blank stone, and first we just need courage, right? And
Mm,
then we have to be patient with ourselves, and then trust the process. And it's going to look different for all of us. It's like there's not a one size fits all. And I'm always repeating, and I love it because I'm like my participants are all starting to say gentle, gentle, gentle.
three
I say
times.
it all the time because we're so hard on ourselves.
Good.
and
Yeah.
and then clarity is born, and then we're learning to get connection, and we get peace, and then the end goal is to be our authentic
Mm,
self. And it's
yeah.
um yeah, it's just it's a journey, and I'm committed to just doing one step at a time to the best of my ability, till the end. And
Right.
we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, thank you.
Hmm.
It's something that I not just honor, but I'm devoted to it, to the process too. Basic because my background it's more spiritual, so I kind of have done a lot of that going deeper into spirituality in the sense of different traditions, the ones that would connect with me the most, like
Hmm.
Zen Buddhism and then Tibetan Buddhism, and then it went through Vedanta. I think Eckhart Tolle, he comes from, I think his background is Zen Buddhism. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
Zen.
Yeah.
So there's something about that, that clarity that we are not the mind, we are not the body. So that's the really the process and the journey. It's really understanding that, realizing that, crystallizing that truth, that you are
Yes.
not the mind. Your true self is already here, has always been here. It doesn't matter how. And the funny thing is, has always been there. Even when we felt the most disconnected and lost and painful and completely in the depth of despair, the true self was always there. Always, always. So it was never lost, really. It's just that we are not, for some reason, the consciousness, the attention, it was given to the mind, and that's why we were experiencing all that confusion. But in truth, we're never confused. We're never lost. We're never really disconnected to what we are, because it's basically what we are. We can never disconnect from that. But it's funny how it feels like a journey, right, Diana? It really does, because it's not easy to crystallize that understanding, that realization. It's not an easy, yeah,
Those
overnight process, right?
No, those feelings, they get in the way. Those feelings make us think we're the mind. Those,
Yeah.
I hear all the time in my groups, and when we feel so lonely, it's many times those feelings are from how we felt as a child. So it's when we can kind of understand, and then, like Eckhart Tolle says, be the observer of what are you really thinking, and question it. Why am I thinking that?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
such a practice. I did a book study. There was about 8 of us that came every week, and we studied Eckhart Tolle, and it was so helpful because that book is so deep, but there's so
Yeah.
much meaning in it, and like I said, that was the
Hmm.
book that helped me get off my medication. So I'm not a
Mm,
big reader. I think I would have been
mm,
diagnosed ADHD, but um,
mm.
there's a few books that were really helped me, Gabor Mate, Bessel van der Kolk, they, with the trauma and the body keeps a score. I'm all about experience. I think I have a lot of wisdom from my experience, not from reading a lot of books. And
Right.
so for me, the triggers, is that's what makes us so not connected to ourselves, because we got all this pain and stuff on top of ourselves. And when
Mm,
we can break through it layer by layer, you know, these one analogy is like being an ice cube, right? Where these ice cubes, the more we thaw, the
yeah.
more we get connected to our feelings, and the more we start feeling everything. And there's something to be said for being in denial, but
Mm,
you're not connected to your true self when you're in denial. And I lived a lot of
mm,
my life in denial as a coping mechanism. So yeah, it's
mm.
such a process.
Oh my God, it is. And have you heard about the unmothered child? Unfathered, unmothered child?
I
Yeah.
have.
Yeah. So that's exactly what it is. I came across this concept after all my spiritual healing work, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's exactly it. We go in life with this hunger to be seen, to be loved, and to get all that, that nourishment that we didn't get as a child. So we just put
Yes.
ourselves in horrible situations sometimes, with people and doing things that they are just not the best thing, the healthiest thing for us, let's say, because of this hunger for love. And
Yeah.
it very much comes from childhood, yeah, neglect and not being given that love that we deserved as a child,
Mhm.
being safe. So I see that clearly. I saw that in my own patterns in my own life, and then I see with people around me. I see with my family members still, and I feel so much compassion for them. And you just mentioned earlier that some people just not, you don't understand. I don't understand why they are not engaging with healing. Maybe they are not ready, because I believe that, yeah, life is just it does what it does. So I don't really I have a hard time with the idea of control, trying to control life. And I like understanding much better than controlling.
Mhm.
So much more being curious about, oh, what about this? Maybe I can ask questions, maybe not controlling. I don't think we can control life. Life is doing what it's meant to do and what it needs to be done. And we are life, right, Diana? We are not apart from life.
Right, right. And
We're
that's a
life.
hard one, I think, especially for us childhood trauma survivors, because we had no control, growing up. I struggle with that, wanting to control things so that I can feel safe. Feeling
Yes.
safe was never a part of my upbringing. And, that
Right.
feeling is in there. So this false thinking I can control things so that I'll feel safe is something a lot of us struggle with. I know. And it's the
Yeah.
spiritual journey to trust the universe.
That's it. That's where this is where I am right now, and I have been for the last 10 years. With all these traumas, all these spiritual understandings that I had, I'm like, wait a minute, how can I put all this together? And then
Mhm.
that's what came to me. Just surrender, just trust life as life. Stop trying to control for safety, right? Or trying to protect yourself for love and all those things. So now I feel so much better that I just let life guide the way. I know it can do a much better job than my, small understanding of life can, of my
Mhm.
ego self. So it's a huge, powerful practice if we can just let it be. Easy said
Exactly.
than done, right, Diana? It takes.
Exactly, and I love the word practice and process, I'm always repeating that, and because I need to hear half the stuff I repeat, because it is these go-to ways of being they're embedded in us, but the more we practice being different and telling ourselves a new story, I always call it telling ourselves a new story, meaning, I'm not in my childhood, a lot of the Patrick wisdom that I received, this too shall pass, you know, you can't rush insight. That's one of
Mhm,
Patrick's favorite.
mhm,
And, it
mhm.
takes what it takes.
Yeah.
And so, I think some people never get on this path. And I don't know, maybe their souls weren't meant to. I just try to accept, like I have a lot of people come to my Saturday group and they're one time, I call them one timers. They don't come back. And my feelings aren't hurt, but I
Yeah.
just, they're not ready. And then I have my regulars that, they really want to be connected to other people that are on this path and to hear the message and they're not alone and they have a safe place to feel and, explore and learn. And I always learn something every week. And so I'm so grateful there's others that want to join me, because it's not for the faint of heart, as we both know. Um,
Mhm. That's it. Yeah. You see, even that process, another process, right, of letting life be too, in a sense, a lot of times sometimes we have to do the work alone. Sometimes life will require that out of us to be alone
yeah.
and do the work alone. And that has been also my one of my challenges. Although I do like being alone, but I have a hard time because I love people too. So I'm like, oh, being alone, I gotta dance, those kind of somehow bring that balance. And I have my own space. I love being alone so I can write and do my work, but also sharing with other people, being with people that I know that way I can have these conversations with. And maybe that's why I created this podcast. So not
Yeah.
maybe, I'm pretty much sure that was the intention. So we can
Hmm.
have these conversations.
I love it.
Me too. It's a whole life. It's just magical. It's a really beautiful thing when we understand that we can do it. Not
Hmm.
us as the ego, but us as the true self that's always here. It can do it. So if we can trust that, it's all about trust in that inner light. It really, really, really is. For me, has
Yes,
been.
me too. And I believe I call it solitude is kind of part of this journey.
Yeah.
I had a reading on the difference between isolation and solitude because they're very different. I think a lot of us want to isolate and be alone, but
Right.
solitude, has been something I've had a lot of these past years to really cultivate that relationship with myself. I mean, Patrick was the first one that, in our sessions, he says, Diana, you're never alone. You always have yourself. And I can't tell you how long it took for that message to click into my brain.
Mm,
But it clicked. Well, it clicked one day. And so when I go on my nature walks or when I'm by myself, I'm, talk to Patrick, talk to myself, I'm
yeah.
cultivating a relationship that I never had because I was, disconnected and I was in survival mode like a lot of us are.
Yes.
So a lot of people will ask me, and they're like, "God, I'm losing friends." I mean, and
Mm,
that's kind of part of it too. And my theory is our energy changes, right? And then energy, I don't judge it anymore. It's like once our energy changes, people come and go, and some stay and
mm,
some don't, But in the
mm.
beginning, the grief attached to the abandonment around people leaving our lives,
Yeah.
it's real. I mean, it's painful.
Yes.
And, when we can understand that and feel it and, talk to ourselves and say, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm okay. This is just part of the
Mm,
deal. I need to feel it and heal it, talk to God or higher power. I mean, I try to bring that in a lot to
mm,
any extra guidance is
mm.
helpful.
That's it. Yeah. So you do have the, I see the way you're connected with the spiritual realm, right? The unseen to the idea of God or something that's, it's, well, I see that clearly that the true self, it's already that entity or that part of us that's above, that's greater than the ego is, the mind is, the body is. So I know
Exactly.
there's a lot today about the body and embodiment. A lot of women, they do embodiment work and they, oh, let's bring the feminine out. Let's just the somatic and dance and all those things. I don't know. I still go back to what I know to be true. That the body, the observer again, the one who is can see the body doing what it does, the mind, the activities of the mind, the memories, and all this. This is who I am. The ones that it's aware and not just observing, but it's so close. There's no gap really, but you can tell. We can tell because we want to be able to describe something if we didn't have that distance, if we were not somehow observing it. So isn't it kind of so clear to me that we are what is looking? It's not even outside. It's almost like what we are. It's overarching what we observe. Basically, the observed and the observed is one and the same, but it's we can clearly see that's in it. It's almost
Yeah,
like God. It's we are happening in God. Everything is happening in this intelligence, divine
right.
intelligence kind of realm. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but
It
that's
makes
how I.
100% sense. It's like, being I believe I am a spirit having a human experience.
Yes.
And that was a process for me to get to that belief.
Yeah.
And I understand it. I believe it. And, Patrick would always say, Diana, you want your mind, body, and spirit to all be lined up. There's a
Mm-hmm.
purpose for all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's a trick to get them all lined up.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
it's another goal. And yeah,
Yeah.
I believe, once this body is gone, that my spirit's going to go somewhere. I'm a soul and I have soul
Mm-hmm.
lessons. And I think this is part of my soul's purpose. So I know, I know it's part of my soul's purpose and to make sense out of the life I've lived, one of a lot of pain that it's been a lot, I want to say it's not fair, but it is what it is. And so my new belief system is, there's a reason why I've gone through everything I've gone through. There's a purpose, and that gives me comfort and to believe that. And you know what? As I tell my participants, we can believe whatever we want. If you believe something that doesn't work for you, why don't you question that and then
Yeah.
let it go? You know? I mean, I do. I bring beliefs that make sense to Diana, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's a wonderful thing to have that clarity and power. That's where we have control. We don't have control over most things, but we do have control on what we choose to believe. And yeah, I
Yes.
want beliefs that are going to make me feel better, not worse.
Mm, that's it. Yeah. I see, I hear wisdom there, right? Anything that can, right, help us feel better. Absolutely. I tend to go more into experience instead of just believing something. But, sometimes beautiful to believe too, isn't it? Yeah, I do. Of course, we're using the mind, the tool that we have is just a beautiful thing. Like, using the mind to, I don't know, to meditate, to imagine like the beautiful something happening in the future, a beautiful day ahead when we wake up. There's something about the mind that I love this, the power that the mind has in order to the imaginative, creative power. I just love that. And that might be part of the beliefs, right? Because then we imagine and we believe in it, and
Mhm,
it feels really great. And
mhm, mhm.
so it is a good thing.
Right, and we can change our beliefs too, like, I may
Yeah.
believe something now and then experience may show me that, "Oh, wait a minute, maybe I need to tweak that belief." But yeah, I'm like you too, experience is my biggest teacher, and, when we trust our intuition and we make a mistake, that's okay. A lot of us, coming out of these childhoods try to be so perfect, and that is such that's such a detriment to, and then we're stressed out because it wasn't perfect. And what is perfect? It's like, no,
Right.
everything, this is a new belief. Everything I
Mm,
try maybe didn't go real well, but I can always choose to learn from it and, you know, uh, tell myself it's all okay. It's all
yeah.
okay. I'm doing my best.
Yes, yes, yeah, that's it. I heard recently about, I interviewed somebody, she said, when we die, we don't take our emotions, we don't take our thinking, our belief systems, any of these things. We don't take the body. Obviously, we don't take the body. So the only thing that remains is this neutrality, like how much of our own lives we're able to observe, as you said, Eckhart Tolle with his message of being in the moment, being present, how much of the potential of this moment in its purity, in a sense of how much of life as it is, we are able to accept exactly as it is. That's the only thing that really matters. That
Right.
made sense to me, Diana. I don't know. It really resonated with me when I heard her saying that too.
Yeah, I resonate with everything you say too.
Yeah. I mean, it's just there's so much that we can learn, right? Like you said about storytelling, just by hear something like, oh, wait a minute, that
Yes.
yeah, that resonates, true
Mhm.
too.
That applies
Yeah,
to me. Or, gosh, that didn't happen to me, but why am I feeling what I'm feeling based on somebody sharing that
mm,
story? There's some connection, and a lot of times our minds don't really understand it. And I think
right.
part of my healing was because I made up so much of my reality. I didn't really have a clear picture of life. I got to understand the real truth through feeling my triggers. And
Yes, yeah,
if that makes any sense. It
yeah,
I I
yes,
gained clarity. I mean, I get more clarity even to this day when I process a trigger. I process it by being the observer and not judging it and telling myself a new story. And then when it passes, I usually come out with more clarity of,
yeah.
my thinking is a little more clear. I have a little more discernment. I'm like, oh, okay. I get something different now. It's kind of a
Mm,
cool phenomenon.
mm. Yes, I love that message about the triggers being the teacher. That basically is guiding, is the guide to truth, to the true self. Yes. I do that too. I'm always working on I perhaps phrase a little bit differently in the way I say, like, I see you. I basically say I'm watching you. Like, I see you're not me, but that's okay for you to be you. I basically say that because I tend to have a lot of love for life itself and respect for
Mhm.
everything that manifests, that appears in my field of awareness. So I'm always very respectful about it. And I say, it's okay for you to be you too when the body becomes nervous. Now, so I'm very compassionate, yeah, with the whole human experience because it's not easy. Yeah,
It's
mm,
hard.
it is, Diana. It is not
Learning
easy.
lessons, and I keep having hope that it's gonna get easier. You
Yes,
know?
not really sometimes. Yeah, but you see, as long as we as we can ground ourselves in truth, the truth of what we are, beyond who we are, then that's what really, 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 really I'm very interested in. And I'm
Yeah,
always practicing that. Of course, sometimes it gets mixed up and then sometimes it gets um, consciousness kind of lose itself again in the experience. But I know the way back, the way home. And I think that's the adventure of life, isn't it? We can get lost, but then as long as we know the way back, then we'll be okay.
yes. Exactly, having whatever formulas work for us. And I say it's hard, but you know what? It's so much richer and more rewarding, and the joys are longer and more fulfilling. And
Right.
when I was on all those decades of medication and living in denial, I didn't have the joy moments that I have today. So even though life can be hard, there's rewards. I believe, I, for myself anyway, from doing this work and,
Yeah.
just putting one foot in front of the other and staying connected to others on this path and, feeling to healing and
Yeah.
telling ourselves new, truthful stories because we come out of these families with not talking so nice to ourselves, and we have power to change that, and it just takes what it takes. So
Yes,
yeah.
yes, right. Creating our own map, right? Our own map that will take us back home. Yes, it's not one size fits all. It's not about, yeah, like doing, it's really finding our own way of returning to ourselves. It really, really is. Thank you
Exactly.
so much again. We're almost at the end. I really, really appreciate, I love your presence in our shared reality and what you're bringing. It's very, it's not just helpful, but it's sacred to me. That it's kind of again going through this journey, this adventure, and then telling the story. There's something sacred about that, and we know that from even religion, like the story of Christ. Stories are very powerful. So I just love. I kind of detached a little bit from storytelling before because I thought it was just kind of holding on to the past, and I didn't like
Mhm.
that. But now it's just coming back to me in a whole different kind of light. And now it becomes more like giving back, storytelling in the sense of giving back, passing down wisdom, timeless wisdom, soul wisdom,
I
something
love
that's
Yeah.
very important in this reality. So thank you
Mhm.
for doing that too, and for meeting me today and kind of talking exactly about something that I'm wholeheartedly into it these
I'm
days,
so
storytelling. Thank
glad.
you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Diana. I want to mention your website is dianazamudio.com. It will be on the podcast notes at the end of the video too. I want to mention that your book is on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. You also offer, you have been mentioned the support groups and workshops, one-on-one consultation. And you also have, we didn't talk about this, but you have tarot card readings. Talk to me
I use
about that for a
double in
moment.
that a little bit.
Yeah, that's curious. Yeah, I would love for you to briefly talk to me about tarot. How do you integrate this, like the tarot card readings?
I do it very just kind of, real simple readings. And, for me, tarot cards helped me connect to myself too. That was part of my process,
Mm,
getting in touch with these cards and giving myself readings every day. They said things that I was like, oh, that's so true. That's so true. That's so true. And then I would give readings to my friends, and it was always spot on. So I just have this
mm,
love for the tarot. I don't do a lot of different cards. I have a couple decks of cards that I use, and
um,
they've been an instrument to help for connection into, for me, my true self when I didn't know really what was going on. But they're like they speak the language of the soul, and
yeah.
so
Ah, wow. I love that too. I love the language of the soul. I'm very interested in that too. So those concepts are kind of new to me for the last, yeah, 2, 3 years. They've been coming in like the soul, the storytelling, all this coming together now. And then I see, yeah, and the soul has to do with intuition, right, Diana? They're kind of connected with intuition.
exactly. And that's
Mm,
why I'm passionate about the tarot, because I wasn't connected to my intuition for so much of my life. And the tarot, it was like this magic. Like, how does these cards know what's going on with me? And so, I love the tarot because I'm connected to myself now, so I don't use them as much for as I used to, but I used to use them all the time, and it really helped me connect.
yes. Wow. I love to hear this. How how you go from one like a very structured kind of psychological kind type of work, and then you kind of blend that also with intuition, soul work, mysticism, mystery. I mean, this is really a whole being, isn't it? Like exploring the all aspects of being and not just
Yes.
kind of being stuck in parts of life, but living the wholeness of life. It's there's so
Mhm.
much. There's so
There
much.
is. It's like, I
Yeah.
know, limitless, it seems.
Thank you so much again. Do you have
Mhm.
anything that you left unsaid? Any message that you want to deliver in this very end?
Mm. Oh God, nothing that's coming to mind. This has been wonderful. It's been really a pleasure getting to know you and the connection I feel with you, being coming out of, there's a special connection connecting with people that come out of homes that their
Oh
needs
yeah.
weren't met. I think there's that language, and my soul and heart is always warmed when I connect with another fellow person on the path. So thank you.
Mm, thank you. I feel the same way. Yeah, it's sacred. to me. Yeah, I feel the same way. Oh my God. And I met so many of them. I wish I hadn't, Diana, but sometimes you wish, like, oh, maybe it was just me. But then you see so many people going through, like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And then you, at the same time, you feel, like, is it reassured and supported. But at the same time, it feels like, oh, I wish this didn't happen so often,
I
It's
know. There's a
so common.
sadness. Yeah, no, but then there's this feeling of, God, I'm not alone, and I think that's the beauty. I think a lot of us feel so alone, and when we can
Yes.
stay connected and support one another, the power of being acknowledged, listened to, and heard, that's what ultimately helped heal me working with Patrick. And that's what we do
Mhm.
in our group. So, because we didn't get that as children. So,
That's
yeah.
it. Yeah. Again, I love the way you talk about Patrick. Yeah, it feels like he became like this external father, mother, as a
Mm,
guide, right? Leading you to your
yes.
own mother, your own God, father within. What a
Hmm. Hmm.
beautiful being. Yeah, what a beautiful soul. Thank you so much again for, yeah, for honoring his presence. Yeah, thank you. And we'll talk soon. We'll be in touch again. Take good care of your beautiful self, Diana, for now.
Thank
We'll
you.
talk
You
soon.
too.
Bye for now, my dear. Aloha. Bye.
Bye.